So have you found your perfect bicycle saddle yet? Or is there one bike saddle out there on the market you can just rush out and go and buy it and put it on your bike, and it's absolutely ideal for you. It fits you like a glove. In fact, everybody else who's got that saddle that you know says the same thing. Unfortunately, no, there is no such saddle. And the flood of saddles on the market indicates just the opposite. Everybody has an individual requirement out of their saddles. So with all those saddles available to you on the market, how do you find your one best saddle or your ideal saddle for you personally? Well, that's what we're going to do in this series of videos. We're going to help you narrow it right down so you don't have to spend hundreds, maybe thousands of hours on uncomfortable saddles as you ride along umpteen number of kilometers, trying out all these saddles. That one's no good, this one's no good, that one's close but not quite, and spending hundreds if not thousands of dollars in the meantime as well. So the information in this video you'll be able to apply personally to you, so you might like to get pen and paper out as we go along to take notes as well. Now I'm also going to show you my personal search for a saddle. This here is, this came with this bike, this saddle. It's a Fizik R5 and it's a nice saddle for somebody else. So it's too narrow, it's a 135mm in width, and I normally take 140 to 145. So I persevered for a long time and it's time. Here's the Allen key. We're going to change it. So here's a fair few saddles here that we're going to go through. Now all these saddles are cheapies. They're all $20 or less at the moment. They're made in Taiwan or China, and the quality and the design is really good. The really only difference between an expensive saddle like that one and these cheaper saddles is the weight. That one might be 80 to 100 grams lighter than these ones, and that's about it. So comfort wise, we're going to find a much more comfortable saddle than that. So I'm going to show you them, and some of the riders locally have lent me some of their seats as well. They're a little bit more expensive than these, but if we've got time, we'll show you them as well. So the essentials we're going to consider are your physiology and your anatomy, how you're personally going to relate to the saddle that you'll be sitting on. Then we'll have a look at the way you sit on your bicycle as a whole when you ride along. Not a bike fit, but just in relation to the efficiency and comfort that you're going to experience on the saddle itself. After that, we're going to have a look at those small adjustments that you make with your tool, your Allen key or your spanner up here. Those small adjustments on the seat pillar, they're vital to finding the right spot for comfort for you. After that is the saddle shape and designs and sizes that you can get, how to personalize that for you. And then finally, the test ride, very important. Test riding a bike saddle is vitally important to finding the right saddle, the ideal one for you. So with that in mind, let's get on with it. Here's my Allen key. I'm going to remove this seat and try my seat number one. With each seat comes individual adjustments of height, tilt and distance to the handlebars, but more on that later. $72 kilometers today, and the seat's quite good. It's definitely better than the Fizik. That's fast enough for me.
That was good.
Yeah. So that's seat number one, and so far it's better than the Fizik. I like it. That was 71k, 72k. So very pleased with this saddle. No discomfort in two rides we did, 80-85 k's each ride. No problem whatsoever. My bottom really likes this seat. Looking at the seat, it's actually very well made too. It's $20 seat, so it's on the top there at the limit of about $20. But there's no staples underneath holding it in. There's no screws with little bits of plastic holding it as well. No sharp edges. In fact, the cover is tucked in between two parts of the shell. It's like they've got two shells and then tucked it in and pressed it together in the factory with the glue. So it's nice and smooth all the way around. No bits to come loose or to catch. Very nice. To top it off, the actual cover is real leather as well. Not only that, the rails are also chromoly. So we're looking at a quality seat here. It's almost like they got the price wrong. The other thing is, it was the only seat that came in its own little box, even though it doesn't say much. It just had few little details on the side. It says saddle on the front, but it's got a nice little piece of foam in there. But anyway, it was the only saddle that came in a box rather than just wrapped in a piece of plastic. It's got the perennial relief, a good sized hole, and it's in the right spot as well. It's forward more, not in some obscure place like right back here. So it's a very wide nose seat, but that's okay. Had no problem with that whatsoever. Now the thing is with it is it's a short snouted seat. It's actually a short seat, so if you line up a normal seat, it's just a cheap normal seat, you can see how much further the nose sticks forward. So how do they come about the short nose seats? Well, it's quite simple. In the early days with the normal size seats, with the UCI regulations, when the riders want to do time trials, they shift the seat forward as far as they can, and so they're over the cranks and they can spin fast. But by shifting the seat forward, the nose sticks out, and the UCI regulations said the nose came too far forward. They measured it, that's the regulations, and so what some riders did, some of the teams, they actually literally cut the nose off, probably got a hacksaw, cut the nose off so it would fit in the UCI regulations and they could have their seat forward. So rather than do that, some developers actually made the seat shorter, and now it's taken off. It's because they're very comfortable. It's taken off and they're making short seats now. So there you go, that's the story behind how they get the short seats. Oh, by the way, it's also got two holes underneath, I'll show you, and you can mount a light or a camera underneath. So that's very handy as well. Very pleased with this seat, but time to take it off and go to the next one.
Most of our weight comes in contact with the bicycle seat at this point. They're called the ischial tuberosities, or commonly called the sit bones, and they sit on or just in front of the widest part of our saddle. As we lean more forward on our bike, we tilt our pelvis forward as well. This takes more weight off of our ischial tuberosities, transfers it to the rami of our pelvis, which lies more forward on the saddle. Two things to take note is the distance between the sit bones or the ischial tuberosities is wider in the female than the male, and the infrapubic angle is also wider in the female than the male. For these two reasons, the bicycle saddle is different for men than for women. Women's saddles will not only be wider at the sit bone area, but also on the nose as well, and slightly rounder on the edges. Both men and women have a plethora of nerves and blood vessels in the perineum area, and the less compression on these, the better. A last thing to mention, which may seem a bit strange at first, is if you look carefully at all the illustrations of our human anatomy, they are usually drawings and have perfect asymmetry. But reality is, we are imperfect. We have defects, faults, deformities, infirmities, shortcomings, and weak points. For instance, one of our legs might be slightly longer than the other. Perhaps we're carrying a scoliosis of the spine and don't know it. How about a pelvic tilt? Saddle nose a bit further up or saddle nose a bit further down. Then there's muscles, tendons and ligaments. These also have imperfections and synergistic problems. And the list goes on. But no need to despair. It simply helps us understand we all have individual bike fit and saddle shape requirements.
Here, 17%, is that a worldwide or Australian? Worldwide, 17% of the population have one leg different size than the other. So, there you go.
Yes, there's different ways you can do it from the anterior superior spine or right at your canter.
And Steve here has got, not me, has got one leg longer than the other. He was just showing me. His femur, he had a motorbike accident, and one femur came out, broke, and they put it back for surgery, and one leg is shorter than the other. Put your legs together again, just so.
Yeah, put them down here.
Head's in the way. That's not 4 centimetres. How much is that difference? That's about 1.5 centimetres, isn't it?
That's about 30 maybe.
Yeah, if you guys need a toilet, it's next door.
3 centimetres, 30 mil. And he's got some spaces under his cleat here.
Seat number 2 going on.
Oh, you got wire.
Yeah, they're white.
See, these are fold.
So here we go today.
They're folding
There's
tiles.
two, they called exactly the same as
Yeah,
that.
yeah, but you can either get them with.
The guy's talking about the new Continental GP 5000s, but too expensive at the moment.
I don't like the white. You've got puncture sometimes.
Yeah, you got to concentrate. Banana time. So far, seems perfect.
What do you see?
So today's ride was 75, 76 Ks with just over 1,000 metres of climbing. And I didn't drink enough water. So this seat, now this was fine, really good, but I did notice on one of the long climbs we had that I started to notice the nose of the seat. It wasn't uncomfortable, but I did feel, I can feel the nose of the seat move a bit, move a bit. So now whether the angle's exactly right for this seat, might be too far down or too far back, too far forward, too far, whatever. There's so many factors to consider there. So, but nevertheless, it's a lot more comfortable than the Physique saddle. Now the same with the kit. When you ride, I don't test each of these seats with the same kit. I use a different kit all the time, otherwise it'd be boring to start. So today I rode with M&M's, and the Nicks, the chamois in these Nicks. Now that's the other thing, is different chamois in different kits will have a different interaction with your bottom and the seat. So that's the chamois in this one, which is, I've got a few of these chamois and I like them, they're quite nice. So anyhow, it could be anything, but it's a lot more comfortable than the Physique, but I did notice the nose a bit on that one. Right, next seat.
Firstly, what style of riding will you be doing on the particular bike that you'll be riding? Casual, recreational, sports, or for aerodynamics? Different angles of your upper body result in different pelvic tilts. Even when you've got your ideal position, where do you spend most of your time with your hands? Is it on the top of the bars, on the hoods, or on the drops? These may seem small changes in the angle of your upper body, but will still affect the tilt of your pelvis on your saddle. Your riding position and style, or kinesiology, is individual. None of us can be plotted out by a computer to an exact position. Such factors as age, infirmities, imperfections, injuries carried, our weight, and our flexibility are just some of the factors that will hinder the perfect posture and comfort on your saddle. It's a matter of working with what we have. A good overall bike fit, which we can discuss in another video, allows you to ride comfortably and efficiently. Some telltale signs of a misfit is pain in the hands, quite often numbness or tingling in your fingers and a lack of circulation. Even pain in the forearm and upper arm. Then there's shoulder fatigue, which is quite common. Neck strain, back pain, especially in the lower back, and in the pelvic region, which is what we're addressing today to do with your seat. Then there's knee pain and feet pain.
Having the correct seat height will give you the most efficient pedal stroke and will alleviate any irritating physical symptoms that you might experience. Now, some of the things that affect the height of your seat, besides adjusting the seat post itself, is pedal cleat. How high is your cleat? Some cleats are different heights than others, and some pedals are different as well, the distance from the axle to the top of the pedal. Another thing is chamois thickness. You might not think so, but some thicker chamois will put you a couple of millimetres above a thinner chamois, and that can make all the difference. You might not think so, but it does. Another thing is the seat to rail height, the shell to the rail. As you can see, there's two different seats here. This one is higher. If you look at the rails themselves, it's the distance between here. So this seat is obviously going to put you a little bit higher than this seat. So if your seat is too high, you're going to be reaching for the pedals. In effect, you're going to be rocking on your pelvis on the seat, trying to reach for the pedals. So that's too high. And if you're too low, some indications are knee pain and you'll feel the saddle more because you'll have a bit more weight on your saddle as you ride. There are other symptoms as well, but now let's have a look at how to measure the height. So you just need a tape measure and a piece of chalk, and also if you want you can use a steel ruler. You don't necessarily, but it does help a little bit. So find the widest part of your seat. Remember the widest part where it sticks out the most with your fingers, put it on either side, and then just have an imaginary line across. Now get your chalk and actually draw a line. So from that widest part of the seat, you start your chalk line and draw a line. You don't have to go all the way across, but just to the centre of your seat is enough. Okay, so you see that line? Now we're measuring here because this is called the true height. You can measure anywhere you want. You can measure along directly up from your seat post, an imaginary line in the middle of your seat post, and measure from here if you want. But as long as you measure that spot, exact spot, every time. Now I call this the true measurement because this is exactly where your ischial tuberosity or your sit bones are going to be. They're going to be either on or just in front of, which is most common, just in front of this line that you've just drawn. So this is the true height. So now as you measure it, you get your tape measure. Now notice that we're measuring on the left side of the bike, so you have to measure on the left crank because on your right side where your chain rings are, you can't actually see where the centre of your axle is. So here you can on the left side, so put the beginning of the tape measure in the middle of that hole there on your left crank and measure on the line to the top of your seat, to the top where that line is on the top of your seat, in the middle. So that's about 785, 783, 785 millimetres. And you can also go the other way. You can start up the top, put the beginning of the tape measure exactly the same on that line and above, just on the above here, so it's right on the centre. And the way you can find out, and that's why you can use a ruler or something flat, as long as it's exactly parallel, butt that measure up against it, and on the line and measure down, and again eyeball it, 785, 783, thereabouts, 784. Right, so that's my measurement. What's yours? Next is the setback or the fore and aft of your saddle. So it's going to slide back and forward on the rails and you can set it to exactly where you want. Now this is going to affect your weight distribution, whether you're going to put more weight on your frontal area or more weight on your back on your seat area. Some of the classic symptoms of a wrong weight distribution for you is neck pain, wrist pain, most common the hand pain, tingling, numbness, pins and needles in your fingers, feeling like your shoulders are getting tired, or maybe you got some irritation along your back. It's all signs of maybe your fore and aft of your saddle needs to be adjusted. Now there's a classic textbook of get on your bike, put your cranks in a certain position and do a plumb line from your knee, somewhere around your knee area, and it should go round about past your pedal, the axle somewhere. Now don't go exactly on this because this will only put you in the ballpark area, around about where you should be, around about. So maybe you are exactly on the pedal axle, fine, but most probably you're going to be in front of or back of a little bit. But all in all, fore and aft is important, and the only way is for you to ride over time to find out. Now once you find your ideal fore and aft, then you're right. Now the measure, once you've got it, is quite simple. Again, go to that line on your saddle and get your tape measure, put it on the line in the centre of the saddle there, and just go to where you hold on your handlebars, to the centre of your handlebar. So the centre of where you hold your hands on the handlebar, and then that's exactly your true fore and aft length, or your true length. Now for me that's around 795, 797, thereabouts. Now if you've got your bike in a stand or something like this where it wobbles around, just I've got a piece of Velcro thingy, because what happens is as your handlebars move, it's going to change the measurement. So you can put a little bit of Velcro on and that'll hold your wheel nice and straight, thereabouts, and then you can measure from there. Now just turn the bike around and put a seat on and left it loose so I can demonstrate this point. Now with your seat in the middle, your rails act a bit like a suspension system as well, because you've got the saddle shell connected at the front and twice at the back near your sit bones. So the rails act a bit like a suspension, they move a little bit, and so the vibration is absorbed just a little bit. Now the problem is when you have your seat too far forward, you've effectively shortened the rail at the back, and so you're going to get less suspension, less absorbency of the road shock, so it's going to feel harder at the back, and vice versa at the nose. It'll feel floppier on the nose, even though it's got more absorption of the road shock. It'll feel like the nose has gone down a little bit. No good if you want to sit forward a little bit more. Also indicates that you're reaching too far. Your head stem is probably too long and you're reaching out to your handlebars, so shorten your head stem and come back to a more central position. Now if you've got it too far back, then the same thing except in reverse. Your nose area is going to feel more harsher because you've got less suspension in the rail here, less rail. It's going to be more shock coming up through the nose area. And the back area with your weight, especially with your weight on your sit bones, is going to feel floppy. In fact, it's going to feel like that your seat is actually tilted back a bit. So like that, I'm just exaggerating, but that's what it's going to feel like. So don't have your seat too far back either. That also indicates that your head stem is probably too short. So get a longer head stem and come back more central again. So try and aim for having the seat pillar connection around about the center of your rails. Doesn't have to be exact, but around about, and that'll give you the good position, good road shock as well, absorption, and also you'll get your head stem length right as well. Third aspect is the tilt of your seat. So it's no point having the most comfortable seat you've found. If you've got the tilt wrong, you're going to feel the seat. It's going to be uncomfortable. But get the perfect seat and get the right tilt, and you've found your sweet spot, and you're right. And that's what really we're after. What's it called? The Holy Grail. So get the right seat and the right tilt. Can't emphasize how important tilt is. Most bike riders out there who have uncomfortable saddles have not got the tilt right to start with. So get this point right. Now, there's lots of ways of measuring it. You can get tiltometers on your app on your phone, and you can get levels, little bubble levels and things like that. But they all depend on your bike being on a perfectly level surface for a start, and also wherever you move it along the seat, it's going to change a little bit. So now what I say is get a piece of a straight line. This is a piece of aluminium, very light, and it's dead straight. Now you can go across the seat. Now you don't go across the center, because if you've got a perennial relief channel or hole there, it's going to be inaccurate. So go slightly to the side where your body, your pelvic region is going to be resting. So it's to the side like that, and just hold it, and then you measure with the ruler from the top of your handlebar perpendicular to, I don't know, wherever you want on that line, say the bottom of it to there. So for me it's about 132, 135-ish. Now the true measurement again is not across there, but start on that chalk line. So put this beginning on the chalk line, again slightly to the side, exactly on that chalk line. So it's going to be measuring exactly where you're going to be sitting approximately. Now if you want the seats are round as well, that's going to affect, if you put it slightly to the side, depending on the roundness of the seat, that's going to affect the height as well. So put it on the center, on the dead top of the peak of your seat, where it's the absolute highest point, but on that chalk line. Now measure, and that's the true height. That's your true tilt. Now, depending on what saddle you use, the tilt's going to be different, but record that, whatever it is. Once you've found the right tilt for yourself, record that for that particular saddle, and then you can go ever so slightly different in tilt. Now, again, for the seat pillar, some of them, they go click, click, click as you adjust them with these little clamps here, click, 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 click. You don't want one of them. Get one where you can just undo the nut, just tap it, and it moves ever so slightly. So when you put this measure on, this line, a slight little bit of movement, a fraction of a millimetre, is going to be amplified by quite a few millimetres up the front, and you'll detect it, you'll measure it. That's how accurate this method is, really, really good. So it's important to have something that is dead straight for a start, something that's not affected by weather conditions like moisture in the air or temperature. So for instance, a piece of wood, it might look straight, but on a moist tropical sort of feeling day, it's going to be slightly bent. It may not be, but it may be. So go for something like this. An aluminium, steel's a bit heavy, so to hold a piece of steel across might be a bit hard for you. So a piece of aluminium is nice and light. I always keep this one, and it's angled. This one's angled, so keep it nice and strong as well. So that's your tilt. Now another way of measuring tilt is, you're probably familiar with one of these. It's like two rulers and it's joined together with a swivel. So you can get one of these and you put the flat side down on the seat, again on that chalk line in the middle of your seat, and you let it drop to the handlebar like that and just lock it up. And that'll give you an angle reading because you can hold it there. You can either put that on your other bike, compare it, or you can read that reading and record that, whatever it is. Again, same thing, if you slide it back, you can measure it from the back of your seat and it'll give you a different reading, or you can put it exactly on that line, which is a better reading again. So if you've got one of them, well and good, or if you've got one of these. Very simple device. It's got a little thing here which plugs into the hole in your left crank there, and it's got a little pointer there that you rest on your mark on your seat, and it moves different angles and it's got measures on it. So you plug it in and you undo this bit here and you rest that pointer exactly on the chalk mark there, and you tighten this bit up here like that. So you let that front bit rest on your handlebar and you tighten this bit up here. Oh, got that wrong. There we go. All very simple. There we go. Now you can read the measurements. This one says, I need my glasses, 782, 782, 783, and this one says up the top 796, 795, thereabouts. And the other thing is, it keeps the angle, so if you pull it away, pull it out, it's got the exact angle, so you can go and put that on your other bike, plug it into another road bike, and you can get the angle right as well. Measurements, the height, everything, it's all on this little device here. Very handy. This is a homemade one. Don't ask me to show you how to make it because that's a big video. So now you know how to measure your position in relation to your seat, so write those measurements down. That way you've got them for reference and you can transfer those figures from one bike to another. So it'd be road bike to road bike or mountain bike to mountain bike. You wouldn't go time trial bike to road bike or anything, it's a different position, but bike for bike. So that's why you have them written down. Now if you haven't had a proper bike fit or you're not sure about your position on your bike yet, that's fine, don't worry. Write those measurements down anyway. That way, if you want to, over time, you make slight improvements, you can always alter those numbers and you'll gradually hone in on your ideal position. So the first point is to write down your style of riding that you're doing. So if it's CX or mountain bike or road riding or time trial, you'll have a separate list for each individual style of riding. So for instance, if you're just doing road riding, you just ride road bike, and then you can also record even the sort of terrain that you're doing. Some guys have got multiple road bikes. They've got a road bike for hill climbing, slightly different setup to their other road bike, which might be used just for flat riding or criterium racing or something like that. So you've got slightly different, even though the same road bike, slightly different measurements. So a different list for each individual bike or style of riding you're doing. So that's point number one. Number two, write down imperfections. Any imperfections that you're carrying. For instance, you might have one leg slightly different than the other, which we've covered. So write down your crank length difference, might be only half a centimetre, so write that down, whatever it is. You might want to write down any injuries that you carry. Maybe they're permanent, maybe they change over time. Write them down. Your weight usually changes over time. If you've got a goal in mind, you want to lose weight or you want to gain some muscle for track racing, whatever it is, write that down as well. Flexibility, try and touch your toes. If you can't, well, measure how far away you are. Over time you might get more flexible or less flexible. So a reference, always write those things down. So in the imperfections, so that's point number two. Now the third thing to write down is those measurements we took of your position of your seat on your bike. So the first thing was the height. From the centre of your bottom bracket axle to that mark on the seat up the top there, write down your height, whatever that is. In my case, I was 782 millimetre, so write 782. You also might want to write down what sort of pedals that you're using at the time. So I'd write Lucchio Carbon, so whatever pedals you're using, because sometimes this is slightly different stack height for different pedals. The next measurement, write down, was your length. So from the mark on the seat to the centre of the bar here. So your length, write down that. in my case 795 millimeter. And the last one to write down was the tilt. So from that line across here and that distance here from your top of your bar to that line. So write that down, the tilt. So it might be 115, and as well write in the tilt column there the seat that you're using, because each seat has a slightly different bearing on the tilt, will feel slightly different. So in this case I'd write down, in my case, Specialized Roman. Right, so you've got that. So that's the end of part 1, and you're well on your way to finding your ideal saddle. So watch part 2 of the saddle series, and I'll see you there.